What's up? What's up, yo? This is Views Podcast. Welcome to another exciting episode.
Yeah, chat. Welcome, guys.
We used to be global. We're still global.
We're still global, man.
Now we're national. You know what I'm saying?
Very, very national. Chat.
Yeah. Today's podcast is brought to you by the Practitioner, the perfect venue for your perfect occasion. Charlie, what did they do?
Everything. Practitioner, they do everything, chat.
Yeah. They are into events. They have a venue for events. Any event you're looking at, you can call them on 0244926622 and they will hook you up. Space, parking,
indoor,
gensets, indoor, outdoor,
PA systems,
everything. So
everything unlocked, Charlie.
the Praetorium, the perfect venue for your perfect occasion.
Yeah, we also have MatCon, which is the first speed dating event in GH. We have an event somewhere in September, so it's coming to you. So just find us on Eventbrite and we'll be there. MatCon, laugh, drink,
And switch. Yeah. Let's jump right into it. Today we have a special guest in the building. What I say special? Have I ever used that word? I guess. But no, this one here.
This special be special.
Proper special.
Yeah, you gonna.
I was on Twitter and I saw a book. I was like, I have to shoot my shot and see whether I can land.
But you know the read book.
I know. So this one will help.
Okay.
So I saw this lady of substance. We all know her. I'm sure the name resonates. Everybody knows the name.
Yeah.
I remember, and I'll tell you a story. This is all part of me introducing her. About two years ago, I was starting a comedy shop.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I was starting a comedy shop, and I wanted to add spoken word poetry and stuff to it. So I went to the streets and I asked, Charlie, I want to do this. So who do I contact? And the name popped up. Yeah, a very special name. She goes by Apiorkor. I just learned because I read her biography. She's Apiorkor Seyiram Ashong-Abbey. Now, she's into media. She's been in media for a very long time. An award-winning Ghanaian poet, writer, media practitioner, activist, a versatile creative of Ga, Dangme, and Ewe ancestry. That was very important to you, wasn't it?
Very, very important.
Anyways, welcome to the show, Apiorkor Seyiram Ashong-Abbey. Charlie, make no some noise, man. Charlie. Anyways, and then we have boss. Introduce you.
I am me.
We have an observer who may, join in anytime he feels like, cause he's a boss himself.
Apiorkor's handbag.
Really? He's a boss. Oh. He's a boss.
A boss himself.
Low key boss.
Low key boss.
So they like that.
Yeah. So today's podcast is about Apiorkor's book. Now it says the title is the Matriarch's verse.
That's right.
When I saw the word, Charlie, was big, and then I added Y to it. It became matriarchy. I was like, oh, snap! Opposite of patriarchy. Meeting who's out
for break and down first.
You know what I'm saying? I was like, oh, that's what she's talking about. So she's here to talk about the book and other stuff. Welcome, Apiorkor, once again.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
It's an honor.
Well, Apiorkor, who are you, Charlie? Tell us about you.
I always struggle to answer this question. But I'll answer it as simply as I can. I'm just a human being trying to make it on this earth. And in trying to make it, I'm trying to pull as many people along with me as I can and make sure that the human experience is a positive one. That's really what it is.
Charlie.
Well said.
Should be poet up back.
Charlie.
Anyway, so this whole poetry thing, the spoken word, have you always been doing that?
Okay. So I think a lot of people ask me, are you a spoken word artist or a poet? So I'm a poet.
Okay.
Spoken word art in itself comes with its own parameters for creativity, and I can't claim that. You have the likes of Rhyme Sonny who are in there, Poetra Santoa, brilliant spoken word artists who are making on the Ghanaian scene. But I'm a poet. So people like myself, Nana Sase, Chief Moomin, we studied at the University of Ghana Department of English. And so we are primarily writers before we are performers. Now, I started writing when I was 14. So poetry is not new to me. But somewhere around 2011, I discovered that, look, I mean, Ghanaians struggle with reading, and especially when you're talking about poetry, because when you mention poetry, people are thinking about Shakespeare and all these things that are not really Ghanaian or African in their minds. Of course, we have the sages like Professor Kofi Anidoho, the late Professor Tukwe Okai, Amatai Idu. There are these people who have written great poetry for Ghana. The late Professor Kofi Awuna is another. But usually when we think about poetry, we don't think about them. We think about the people who are coming from the Western lands. Sure. Okay? So unfortunately, people don't like to read poetry. So I said, okay, if I'm going to get people to hear what I have to say, then I have to take it to the streets. I have to go into the artistic spaces, see what's happening. So I met Sir Black. I don't know if you know who Sir Black is at Halakasa. So Halakasa is like the biggest group of spoken word artists and performance poets in Ghana. It's groomed a lot of people from Mutombo. You know who Mutombo is? Yeah. Good. There's Sir Black himself, who convener of Halakasa. Nanasasi himself passed through there, so did Poetra, J. Jum, all these big poets or poetic names that you know in contemporary Ghanaian poetry passed through at Halakasa at one point or another. You also had people of equal thoughts and spirits who were organizing shows like Alewa, and Rhymesoni was one of the champions of that. So I said, let me get into this scene and see what I can do with it. And that was difficult because, like I said, I'm not a spoken word artist. And the way I write is typically not written for performance. So when somebody is writing to memorize their pieces, there are hooks in there that can help them to come back to a line. I don't write like that. And plus, I have lots of semicolons and all sorts of interesting punctuation in there. So I said, okay, I'm going to perform my poetry, but I'll read it. And it wasn't strange for me because you look online, you see the likes of Maya Angelou reading their poetry in performance. But Ghanaians weren't accepting that. People would come up to me after a performance and say, oh, you know what, you did well, but you have to memorize your poetry. And it used to mess with me because I was wondering if it was for me or not. And I said to myself, you know, I'm going to make this my own. So I learned about performance poetry and how you can perfect the craft of reading your pieces in performance, and here we are today. So I'm one of the few poets who actually read in performance in Ghana. Chief Moomin is another one, and Asasi does it sometimes, and it's a craft on its own. Right? Mutombo also memorizes. Okay, you know, he is a straight up spoken word artist, and he's brilliant at it. You know, one of the veterans in the space. Yes, one of the veterans in the space, and we give him the respect.
Nice. Yeah.
You know.
The thing is, I'm actually surprised. You mentioning some Halakasa or something. Yes. I've never heard of it before.
Yes.
Sir Black never. Maybe because I'm not in the space, but
perhaps.
I think I've been around a bit.
Yes. But Halakasa, so Halakasa used to meet at the Nebuka Foundation. Okay. That was our space. And once a month, we would go there for open mic sessions. And it was really just a stage to sort of share what you had, see how it would be received. A few art enthusiasts who were not primarily artists themselves would come through. Yeah, the likes of Honorable Jifago Mashi, who would almost always pop through. Very, very big supporter of the arts. Of course, Professor Tukwe Okai, even though he was much older than us and there's a whole generational space in between us, was always very interested in seeing how you could groom young poets, performance poets at that, from that space. But it was really just an artistic space. And if you didn't belong to it, you probably wouldn't have heard about it. But a lot of the poets who you see today, here today, even the younger ones, have passed through at Halakasa. These days, the National Theatre has opened up their space, you know, after many years of advocacy. It's become important enough for them to host us once a month. So you find a lot of young people, so the likes of Nati Ugly. I don't know if you're familiar with the new age poets.
No, I don't.
Yes, but I mean, so chances are any poets you hear of, or spoken word artists you hear of, has passed through a Halakasa at one point or another.
So would you say that if there's an industry?
There is an industry, But it's an industry that's still struggling to stand on its own 2 feet. So you have very few poets who are practicing poetry without something else on the side, or poetry is the side gig.
Yeah.
And it's difficult for creatives in general in this country and other parts of the world to make money. And that's because we haven't made creative arts a part of our system, which we consider to be billable. So we tell people, in order to make money or be prosperous, you need to be a lawyer, you need to be a doctor, you need to be an engineer. Even anybody who doesn't study science is looked down upon. You have people in teachers telling their kids in high school that, "Share, so when you're there, you go and do dondology at Legon." Just belittling the craft and the art in the first place. So a lot of young people grow up thinking that art is not important. And it's something that has penetrated our society, unfortunately. But I think that's changing.
Yeah, I think this generation is more...
changing. Yes,
it's more
it's changing.
artistic.
I mean, when you look at it, I think music was struggling. Now it's better than before. When
Definitely.
Reggie Rockstone them started it.
Yeah.
Now I think comedy too is doing better than before.
Absolutely.
Because of some of the shows
Yeah.
you're organizing. Poetry, what's going on there? Are you getting the support you need? Are people even buying into?
We're not. It's
that?
easier to understand comedy. It's easier to understand music. It's a lot more difficult to understand poetry because it sits between the academic and the entertainment scene, right? And so some people think it's pretentious, some people just think it's not important enough. People don't understand that at one point or another, poets, writers were the journalists of their time. So I keep mentioning Professor Apiorkor, and people don't realize that there was a point in time where people like him had been funded by the government, Nkrumah's government, to go and study in the then USSR, come back, and then they were using poetry to air their views. And then we come down the line at a point, media was very heavily censored. But it's poets, writers, creators, performers who were telling the people, the populace, what was going on through their work. And so it's two things. One, at some point we sort of lost our way because there were forces that sort of shut the creative space up. And then there's also just pure ignorance on some people's part. They don't know what traditions we've come from or what the history has been as far as things like poetry are concerned. And so it's lost in our schools. We don't have, between the Kofi Anidohos, Amatai Edus, Professor Apiorkor Seyiram Kofi Awunos, and us now, we didn't have anyone writing. At least nothing that made it into the classroom. So if you look in at our literature curriculum, most of the African writers, especially for poetry, are either from Nigeria or Senegal. South Africa now is also popping up there. Even Egypt. You've got the likes of Nawal el-Saadawi of Egypt. But then very few Ghanaians. It's the same names. If you talk about novels or prose, Ayikuyama is there. Now, at some point, there's Peggy Opong, there's Amadako. But for poetry, no Ghanaians.
But why is that? Because if I go to ANC more, behind, there's a bookshop over there. So I I made a resolution years ago that I was going to read 100 books in a year. That was about 4 years ago. I haven't read 3.
Wow.
But I don't know. But so I used to go, so I read, then I go buy a new one. What I realized was when you go there, all the books you see, like, in front of you, are all foreign books.
Right.
If you want a Ghanaian book, you have to go to the back before you can get a novel from by a Ghanaian to read. Why do we keep doing that to ourselves?
It's for 2 reasons. We're not marketing our writing, and like I said, our curriculum is also sick. So the people who have developed our educational curriculum, and I keep saying that almost every problem we have in Ghana can be traced back to the state of our educational system. We have not prioritized it. So when people come, those who have studied anything text-based have heard about all the foreigners. And so they're interested in going there. it's also generally very expensive to produce or to publish in Ghana and in Africa in general. And so our books tend to be more expensive than the foreign ones. Now,
but great content though.
Great content, brilliant content.
Yeah,
but if a school has to fund the textbooks or the text of study for their curriculum, say the capitation grants are not coming, the government is not giving them the money they need, of course they're going to choose a foreign book which is cheaper and relatively more well known, so that students can even follow up by Googling what has been said. Spark Notes is there, all these things online. You can't really do that with a Ghanaian writer. You can do it with relatively few African writers, okay? And so all those dynamics are there. But then, for poetry in particular, up until now, we've not really had a publisher in Ghana who publishes poetry or who understood how to publish it. Now there's Dakwabi and Associates who are my publishers, but before them, most people are publishing motivational books, Christian literature, counseling, text, and then of course there are the textbooks. So you have the big Akiola and all these others, Afram books, publishing textbooks, But in terms of literature or softer text which you have to dissect and analyze, we don't really have publishers who are doing it. We have Ghanaian publishers like Ayibia Clark, but she's not based in Ghana. And so to even get to her would be difficult. True. Even Aikuyama doesn't have his publishing house here. Parank is not based in Ghana. So if you're going to say be very lucky and blessed to work with him, that's another thing altogether. And then we do have Willie, who publishes poetry, but he's not really the contemporary poetry guy. And so a lot of young people would not be comfortable working with him because there's just this notion that he wouldn't understand what you're writing, because we're subverting the conventions in the way we write, even in the way we perform. The tones are different. We're not as theatrical. We're more real. Some of the spoken word has taken on a more hip-hop, Afro-pop style. And you want somebody who understands that contemporariness to be the one to publish you. And so these are some of the things. And then if you have that problem, of course, when a book is published, it's going to be at the back of a bookstore because the marketing is poor.
Why? I mean, I understand that you need to market it, but if I'm a Ghanaian bookshop owner and I have Ghanaian books in my store, I'll make say a policy to always put, the good ones, in front. It doesn't hurt.
Well, it does, because it's easier to sell what is foreign, because that's what people know. People have heard of Daniel Steele. They've heard of Sidney Sheldon. They've heard of Stephen King. They've heard of all sorts of people who are writing quick business tips, how to be successful, how to be prosperous, how to make your first $1 million. And I before we got on there, we spoke about how people are hungry. So people want to read that kind of thing.
$1 million are shown up.
They don't understand why they should go and read Amma and the Dog Next Door. They don't get it. They don't see it as a way of tapping into what is really going on in our society, being informed about it, and then using that as a basis to effect change. They're not interested in that. They just want to eat.
But usually these books come in free, donations and all that. So but you see, it's not always like that. So what happens is, because of the production costs here and the production constraints, publishing constraints, a lot of Ghanaian writers, African writers, will go and publish with a foreign publisher. Well, I don't want to mention names, but, Western publishers. Now, a lot of them are cheated in the way things are produced, and that also means that the marketing is poor. So your bookstore owner in Ghana may get it in the end for a pittance, but he or she doesn't understand the value of what they have in the shop. So they'll put the foreign one, which is can sell itself. You don't even have to talk plenty. And again, let's not talk about the kinds of people who man our bookshops most of the time. They have no idea what is in the books. You don't want them to be talking plenty to spoil your business. So the one that can market itself should be in the front. And then the ones, if people are really interested in Ghanaian African literature, they can just trek to the back and go and pick what they want.
Anyways, the funny thing is, Jay comes from an author. Have you read any of the books before? Yeah, Jay's grandmother is an author, a serious author. How many books has she had?
Wow, Jay.
A couple.
Plenty, not
Who's
couple.
your grandmother?
Probably like 2 digits. She's called Eunice Miranda Brock.
Okay. So why haven't you read any of her books?
Well, Charlie, why you put her like that? So no, it's really because of what she writes. I'm not into that genre of. It's really what religious.
Religious.
So it's more Christian.
Yeah, but she keeps
literature.
publishing every now and then.
I do know her name though. I think the last time she published might have been like 2 or 3 years ago, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, not
Yeah.
too long ago.
Yeah.
Oh, you know her?
Well, I'm familiar with a lot of the
She's
writers in this
industry,
space.
so, yeah. So she gave me a couple, no, 4.
Did you read?
I'm reading.
Exactly. Same thing.
I'm reading. But this ties in with what our previous podcast with Nana Kofi Tego.
Sure, yeah.
I don't know if you've heard of him on Twitter or
The
something.
name rings a bell, but I don't know him
Bediako.
personally.
He just published a book called Bediako.
Bediako.
Yes, and he's called this initiative he calls the Kofnak Initiative.
Okay, I know about Kofnak.
Okay, so that's
Yeah.
Nana Kofi Tego. We had him on the show. Yeah, Views Podcast, you know what I'm saying?
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and we were talking about how he went about his publishing and how he's trying to push it. And he was, going on and on about how difficult it is, trying to make it in the writers'
Yeah.
world. And I can only imagine yours being poetry,
Ha.
Charlie.
Ha.
What you going through?
So even for my publishers, this is their first book of poetry.
Mm.
And these are people who have published Professor John Collins. You know who that is. So, acclaimed high life, walking encyclopedia of high life. And he's got 3 volumes of high life history.
Okay.
And they published that. They've published Lucy Quist, right? Her new book that came out some months ago, The Bold New Normal. They published that. They've published Esankoma, And then there's me, this poet. But it's because of the work that we've done in this space. So these publishers are themselves writers. Nana read Damwa and Kofi Akpabli. I don't know if you've heard of them. So there's this beautiful marriage that they have called Akpabli and Associates, and they started publishing. And they put so much research into what they're doing that, working with them has been bliss, because all I've had to do really is create my content. And it's not as though I wrote a lot of these pieces recently. When you do have the chance to go through the Matriarchs first, the poems typically span a 10-year period between 2008 and 2018. There are a few 2019s in there that I've thrown in. But I've been writing for a very long time. And it's just because I couldn't find someone who understood my work and what it's supposed to do, where it's supposed to go, that I haven't published until now. Now, these people get it. They understand how to market it. They've done the research, and they're writers themselves. Okay, and writers with very diverse backgrounds. Somebody who's into tourism, another person who has an engineering background. So they understand business, so the business side of publishing. They understand the marketing side of publishing. And then they understand what it means to be a writer and the challenges that come with that. And they sort of try to step in and fill in the gap, And like you're saying, Kofi said, very difficult to work on. But even the process itself takes at least 9 months.
Wow.
Yes, so you're basically birthing a child, if you think about it. It's a very long, slow process. You can't rush it. You need to give every stage of the process its due time and due diligence. And it's not easy. But when you do have good publishers, it becomes, bearable.
That was something that I wanted to ask, and you just mentioned it, because I know you're busy, with you being in the media and every other thing else you do. How did you make time to write a book? You just mentioned from 2008 to 2018.
So I have a lot of material. But one thing that I do is I tell myself that each day I should write at least 1 line. Yes, and it's not always just poetry. I have other things coming up that are novels and whatnot. But write a line. Now, you tell yourself write a line, but when you sit down, you end up writing 10 lines or a whole poem or a whole chapter, because you really don't just stop at 1 line.
Sure.
But it takes a lot of discipline. It takes a lot of discipline to do that. And on a day that I miss writing that 1 line, I make sure that I make up for it the next day. And it also means that you have to be in touch with everything around you and beyond. You need to be inspired by everything. You need to be empathetic. I've reached a point where it's not just about writing about myself. I need to carry the voices of other people, the experiences of other people. So it means that I need to be interacting with other people, not just within my immediate social circles. It means that sometimes I need to get off of my high horse and go and vibe with somebody in some slum somewhere. That's the only way that you can tell the stories the way they're supposed to be told.
So
and it's a lot of work.
Do you think your writing style has changed over the years?
It has. Even the topics. So, like, I started by talking about myself, my own experiences, things I'm going through. There are all those things. But I've also come to learn that the gift I have is not for me. It's a way to inform people about things that they otherwise wouldn't have known about. And I'm supposed to use that gift to give people who don't have platforms the voices that they lack. And so my writing style has changed. It also means that even though I have a strong command over the English language, sometimes I need to write in a way that it's English, but it sounds like chi or ga or ever. You get where I'm coming from? It's English in all its grammatical correctness, but it has that the local vibe to it. That's where you know that you have truly mastered the language, where you're using it to the benefit of your context. And again, we've had to learn these things. So like I studied English. I was lucky to be at the University of Ghana at a time when Professor Nido had been away for so long, and that 1 year he came back and I got to be in his class. And it was a huge honor because this is somebody I'd heard about, somebody I'd looked up to, and now here I am sitting in his class. Ironically, he wasn't teaching me any African literature. We were actually doing romantic literature, romantic poetry. So very foreign. But the way he taught had local context. So he could let you see a Shakespearean poem or a poem from Robert Frost or whoever it was, and apply it to local context. And it was the most amazing thing. And, I also had the likes of Professor Helenita, who at the time was our head of department. And she took us for what we call the new literatures in English. So this is post-colonial literature. Literature that's now being written by the marginalized in the colonization circle in English, which is the language of the colonizer, or if you like, in French or in Spanish or Portuguese, depending on which part of the divide you find yourself on. But you're writing in the language and creating your own words for your own context. And there are all sorts of techniques we can go into. I don't want to get too technical.
I know.
But just appropriating the language so that your local followership, the people who matter the most, because it's not the foreigners who matter, the people whose stories you understand best. I can't write about an Italian man's experience the way I can write about a Ghanaian man's experience.
Hence the Matriarch verse.
You understand.
From the lenses of the Matriarch.
Exactly.
I get it. I'm beginning to understand. Let me tell you a funny story about English. I hate people who read English.
Why?
I don't know. Because maybe I can't do English, so I'm just saying
the same story. Actually, come tell the same story.
It's crazy because I remember low-key. Yeah. Okay, it's not low-key anymore if I tell everybody.
You tell everybody.
But I remember I wrote an English exam and I had some 26%.
You feel poto.
I'm telling you, Charlie, AISD, this man will not try.
But the thing about English and really studying any language is that it's not just about the language. Language is very cultural. So in learning a language, you're learning about the culture of the language, the culture of the people who speak the language. Through the words, through the vocabulary, through the phrases, through the sentence structure, the idioms, all those things. Even the way the language is structured in terms of syntax, the semantics of it, you're learning about the people's culture, the way they live, how they think, all those things. But then, when you learn language, you're also pushed to learn the literature, because that's a manifestation of the language. No one speaks language in a vacuum.
Okay.
You speak language to communicate. And literature is a documentation or a form of communication that precedes you. So before you met me, you'd meet my text. That's why we say that writers, are etched in history. We were having this conversation earlier about how, we have this Nkrumah versus JB Dankwa argument and all. But if you realize, Nkrumahs, the people come from Nkrumah's line of thinking, they write. So they are controlling history's narrative. A lot of the JB Dankwa descendants do not write. Think about it. Have you heard how many autobiographies? How many documentations of the letters that were exchanged while they were in prison or out of prison, letters that were exchanged across continents during the independence struggle? They typically don't write. The Nkrumahs do. And so they get to control the historical narrative. And that's what language allows you to do. So now when we talk about something like post-colonial literature, so it's a fine line. You've got Achibe in there from Nigeria. You've got Ngugi wa Thiong'o from Kenya.
That I don't know.
He's the one who wrote Weep Not Child.
I haven't heard about it.
You got Wole Soyinka.
To the wrong person.
I'm telling you, bro.
See, you got Wole Soyinka, who himself is a poet and also short story writer, also Nigerian. Of course, you have Ayi Koyama, who is Ghanaian and also an Egyptologist. Yeah. So these people, at some points, began to change the narrative about Africa not having a history. Because when people say Africa doesn't have a history, it's because they feel it's not documented. But these people show that there were other forms of documentation in terms of murals, wingdings, and other things etched into clay. And you go into the artifacts, the archaeology of it all. And then after them, you come a little further and you've got the Anidohos and the Awunos. If you're talking about Nigeria, you have Ni Oshundari, who is also a poet. I mentioned Awal El-Sadawi of Egypt. You've got Darlene Matthew of South Africa.
How do you keep all these names in your head?
Well, because I studied it. So that's my forte.
Yeah, that's why I hate English.
Mariama Senegal.
Yeah.
But when you read these things, that's where the history is. And there's the reason why I decided to study English. I started out my degree in economics. And I used to get frustrated because, and I didn't just do English, I did political science as my minor. I used to get frustrated that the kinds of narratives I wanted to read about, they weren't written by Africans. I go and I see some foreign-looking name on a shelf. Then I got a chance to just do a study abroad and sit in on an English class, post-colonial literature class at the University of Ghana. And all the things I wanted to know about economic history, political history, all of a sudden it was all there in the literature. So when we say we're an oral people, that oral, tradition has sort of been, or at some point, was translated into documentation. So that we weren't just reaching the local space, but internationally, that's what was happening too. And people understood that. So Achibe understood it. People are still talking about things fall apart for decades. The beautiful ones are not yet born. Ayi Koyama is in there. And now you have the likes of Chimamanda and Americana, and they're turning into a movie and all that. They got it. They understood it. But Ghana, we are sleeping. We're not getting it.
I know.
We're not getting it.
I think we are, but we are probably not in that space. We are starting from the whole, creative side. Artists, music. We're probably going to get there soon. But black people,
we will. I
really
mean,
don't read.
Anyway, some of us will make sure that we do get there.
Well, everything that you said brings me to one of my favorite artists, J. Cole. Oh, you know him?
Yeah.
Anyways, he made a statement in one of his raps where he says the thing about writing is the person who gets to write always find it convenient to write out his sins.
Definitely.
Yeah. So if our history is going to be written by people who don't come from here, people who are not part of us, they are going to write it in a specific way, and we may never know the real truth, where we come from.
Yeah, because we're not in control of the narrative.
Exactly. And that is what you guys are doing. Big ups to that. But let's talk about content, yeah? You being in media and everything, now a writer, always been a writer. This content thing out here, what are you guys doing about it?
In terms of what exactly?
In terms of when I switch on the radio in the morning coming to work, and then Jeffrey will say, you depress him. But not even you guys. When I put it out, like the local stations, and there's a subject matter on board, that's what you're going to discuss. And sometimes it starts off, great, and then it takes a turn. It shouldn't, but they allow it. And that is content they are feeding, the masses with.
Right.
And we are okay with it because we haven't done anything about it. You guys in the media, I would say you guys, since you are here, we'll address you. What is going on?
Okay, so it's two things. Again, I mentioned it even before we went live that there's a broadcasting bill that was put forth, and the motion was moved by the National Media Commission, the NMC. Now, there was a clause in that bill that said that the commission would like to exercise their rights, as it were, legal rights, to, I think the word they used was to authorize content. And the Supreme Court, first, the Ghana Independent Broadcasters Association kicked against it, because if you're talking about authorization, you're more or less talking about censorship. And remember, we've had a time in this country where people are being jailed for the things they were writing and saying.
Criminal libel.
Yes. Yeah. So you see, a lot of people are very careful about how they stage an uprising about the content, because you don't want to make it look like you're trying to impede free speech, But then we've also reached the point where so many people are allowed to do whatever they want, say whatever they want, and they get away with it. And the National Media Commission needs to step in, because they are the ones who are in charge of giving us quality content. I get that they say they have limitations, because when somebody, for example, puts out fake news, right? I'll give you a typical example. Last week, we had this issue where SHS placements were becoming a problem. There were stampedes at the Independence Square.
Yeah.
And people were reporting that people had died. And that wasn't the case. So it caused a whole, cacophony that didn't need to be there. Because now it's not just about people fainting or people almost getting trampled over. The same people have died. Now, what happens when somebody puts out such sensitive mistruths? How do you put them to book? Do you suspend their licenses? It's a whole area that we're being very careful about, all because we don't want to be seen to be censoring content. But there's another side to it. Yes, I work in the media, but the media house that I work with, a lot of the people who work there don't come from strict journalism backgrounds. They have degrees in other things. And so they sort of applied themselves and what they know to journalism. And journalism has become their second skin. Or media practice has become their second skin, right? In other places, people are coming directly from places that have trained them to be journalists or to do broadcasting. Still, in other places, there are people who just have nice voices and nice faces and have been put either in front of a microphone or in front of a camera. These are things that we don't like to say, but that's the truth. Your handsome or your beautiful face, your silky voice is what will get you far in media, is what we are told. So that's what people, you have people call you all the time. I have a nice voice, so I think I can do radio. Who told you so? It's not just about coming to talk. What's the content? So that's one thing. Then we live in a space where we glorify being a presenter or a host. So somebody comes and doesn't want to learn what goes on behind the scenes. They just want you to put them in a seat so that they can be seen or be heard. No substance whatsoever. Now, that's one thing. It would be okay if they had a strong production team to make sure that the substance is simulated, as it were. Okay, my boss at one point told me, look, you can have a dance, put a dance behind the mic or in front of the camera. If the production is tight, the person will be okay, because you can speak to the person, you can guide the conversation. But then production too is not going so well. So people are not scripting content. No proper
research being done.
No, not at all. People who call themselves producers are really just doing production assistance. They are not in control of what goes on air to any extent. Now, what's supposed to happen is that you have the broad strategy of the media house that runs or broadcasts a particular show. And now your producers and your production teams will just craft whatever needs to go on air based on that strategy, based on that vision. But there's some autonomy there.
Yeah.
In other places, you have people just coming from one office and saying, hey, you know what, my friend is here, put him on air. No research. And then somebody is asked to interview the person. I will not do that. In my media house, even my boss will call me and say, please, I have this person. Can you talk to him and see if he's good enough to put on air? Because they let the system run.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's a whole manner of things. I mean, lots and lots of things. But we need to be thinking more specifically. I mean, our media space is growing, especially private media. And our state broadcasters have their own issues.
Yeah.
But it's private media that's driving the conversation, be it in English or in a local language, right? We need to get to the point where we have proper structures for running media space. That's really what it is. Until we have that, the content will always be what you're complaining about.
Yeah, it's a headache. But anyways, now speaking about content again, now let's talk about your book, the Matriarch verse. What is the book about?
Okay.
Let me ask this first. I know it's poetry, so
yes.
that like you have different poetry,
yes,
different pages
poems,
and stuff like
yes.
that. Does it have a subject matter?
Okay, great. So the book is divided into 3 main thematic areas. So on the one hand, there's the human experience through Apiorkor's eyes, the way I see it, people I interact with, spaces I interact with, places I've been, just the human experience in general. And then there's also the experience of the Ghanaian woman specifically. So 21st century Ghanaian woman, what is she made up of? What does she look like? What are the challenges that she may face? What are her shortfalls and what are her successes? And then there are urban issues in Accra. That's the third thematic area. So looking at the gentrification of Accra, for example, looking at the raw urban drift and population issues, looking at the politics and how it affects the space we live in, sanitation, all those things are there. But broadly, the book just questions our Ghanaianness in the 21st century. That's what it does. And the idea for putting this together in this way, because it's not the only content I have tons of poems, but this particular selection is so that we can now create relevant poetic content and get it into our schools. Because one of the reasons why our young people are not interested in reading is because they don't have material that's relevant to them. When I was in high school, in primary school, yes, we read things from, as people would say, dead poets, but we also had contemporary poetry in our curriculum that was made for our time. So it made it interesting to want to study literature. But because there's that gap again in writing a written material, the young people of today don't have the 21st century student, SHS student, for example, primary school student, doesn't have material that they can connect with. And this is just to let them know that at this point in time, this is what is relevant to you. And they can take the things that they learn from here into adulthood and try to solve some of the problems that the book talks about.
So why the Matriarch verse? Why that word, Matriarch?
Okay. So in the Ghanaian contemporary poetry space, I'm considered to be one of the matriarchs. There are a few of us. It's very male-dominated. But of course, and in fact, it's not even just contemporary. Throughout history, poetry space in Ghana beyond, very male-dominated. And it's ironic because when poetry became a discipline, literature became a discipline in the university in England, I think it was 1919, very recent, imagine. It's much later than mathematics or science or any of these disciplines. It was considered a discipline for women and war veterans. So ironically, or so to speak, people who are supposed to be weak. But then these people start, yes,
Really?
Women and war veterans. They are the people who were asked to study literature. And then, I mean, as time went on, I realized I know these people are actually very powerful. You had people like Wilfred Owen of England who were writing very graphic poetry about his experiences at war.
Exactly, because they define the
Absolutely.
narrative. So
yes.
Why would you think they are weak?
But that's the level of thinking. And I just want to tell you that we've even come a long way globally as far as literature is concerned. Okay, but now bringing it back here. our Ghanaian contemporary Ghanaian poetry space, very male dominated. Now there are a few of us. So there's me, there's Crystal Tete, who predates me, and then you've got the likes of Poetra Santwa as well. You've got Jajam. So we're really the females in the space who people would know as far as poetry is concerned. Nana Nyako Boateng is there too, Akosia Hansen, but I'm considered one of the matriarchs. And so there's that. Now, what's a matriarchy? You know, so a person who's a matriarch controls a whole generation. And I have all the time these young poets, and not just young women, but young men too, coming to say, I want you to mentor me. I want you to teach me how to write good poetry. Because it's not just about putting words together and rhyming. There are so many parameters that you can string together to make a good poem. And of course, there are so many subject areas you can talk about. You need to find your voice. So they come to me, and I'm just thinking, okay, what can I name this book? But even before the book, last year I had a concert. It was my maiden poetry concert. So it was me in concert, and I had supporting acts as well. And it had never been heard of, where one poet does a full concert, 2 hours with music and everything. So I asked my friends, family, sisters, what can I call this concert that depicts me as this, matriarch in this space? And my younger sister says, well, the matriarch's verse. So that's where the name came from. So now when I had to publish, I decided to go with the same name. And my publishers thought, you know what, just let this matriarch's verse thing be. Even if you write another collection, it should be the matriarch's verse volume 2, whatever it is. And that's where it came from. So that's why it's called the matriarch's verse.
It's catchy. And when I saw it at first, I thought, when I saw it and later I understood matriarchy, I thought you were trying to make a statement with that name. Like you said, is dominated by men.
And you're very right.
Yeah, you coming out as a woman.
Because I am also a very strong feminist, and I make no apologies for it. Very strong feminist. People have said, well, your feminism is not extreme. And, well, extreme or not, I'm a feminist. That's the bottom line. And I want to make it clear that feminists, we do not hate men. I'm happily married with 2 children. We don't hate men. If we hated men, we wouldn't be making love children. We do not hate society. We do not hate religion. We just hate the things that people, and unfortunately a lot of the time these people are men, even though some women are perpetrators as well. But the things that people use religion and all the other things that make our lives complete to do.
But Apiorkor, you would agree with me that some feminists, the way they push their agenda, make it seem like feminism is about like them hating men.
Okay, so here's the thing, and I'll say this. Unfortunately, a lot of people, even women, don't understand what feminism is about. Patriarchy is a huge issue, and I mean, if we want to talk about patriarchy and dissect it theoretically, we won't leave this place. But patriarchy, just generally speaking, is a system that has been created that gives males an upper hand. And guys, I mean, you agree with me that in a lot of spaces that we find ourselves, the men have a lot of advantages. Especially you look at Ghana. So I'm a mother. I'm a mother of 2. And I tell you, I wouldn't be able to do most of the things I'm able to do if I didn't have a supportive husband. If I didn't have a supportive father. And if I didn't have supportive brothers, like JB sitting here, brothers and male friends who just push me along and open up doors for me. A supportive boss who says, you know what, it's okay to come to work and be pregnant and still make your salary. We don't think about these things because a lot of the time it doesn't affect men. But when you're a woman, these things become your reality. Now, I want to make it very clear that feminism is not about men or women, really. It's just about being able to create a space for all human beings to have equal advantage and just to be treated fairly. That's really what it is. So if we push, yes, feminism, because women tend to be the less privileged in this space, but if we also push it so hard that men also now become disadvantaged, we have an issue there.
Exactly.
We need to create spaces where men and women can coexist and I'm not disadvantaged because of my gender. That's really what it is. Now, unfortunately, and I repeat, and anybody can come and beat me, I don't care. A lot of women who even call themselves feminists don't understand what feminism is. They don't understand the history that we've come from, where at some point you had the suffragettes who were fighting for female franchise. Women should be able to vote in the US and beyond. There are things happening in the political space, in the society. They're affecting women, but women are not allowed to vote for people who can affect policy to make these things better.
Exactly.
So the narrative is skewed. It's the men who get to decide. We have feminists who are fighting to be able to get jobs without having their husbands to sign documents. Look, we've come a long way. In the 70s, I remember in 2016, there's a New York Times reporter who wrote a story, and she titled it, "Why My Mother Will Vote for Hillary." So, of course, 2016 it was Hillary Clinton versus Donald Trump. Yeah. And she went in on this long story, to cut a long story short, about how in the 70s her mom had lost her husband, who is her father. And once she lost her husband, she wanted to renew her car insurance, a car which she had been driving for almost 2 years. They wouldn't allow her because she didn't have a husband to sign the document. So she had to connive with some guy at the dealership who she still holds as like her son, basically, to get her the insurance. She wanted to go back to community college so that she could start getting a better job. She needed a man to sign for her. It's either your husband or your father.
Yeah, that ain't right.
You understand?
Yeah,
she wanted to get a job.
That's
it's
right.
either your husband or your father. And she's saying that, believe it or not, whatever Hillary has done, maybe she's too political, like people are saying, maybe she's not necessarily the best, but for her to see a woman, between the 70s and 2016, get to the point where she can be running for president of the United States of America, that's enough reason for her to vote for her. We've come a long way.
It's just like the blacks also getting an Obama.
Yes, exactly.
The black man vying for that.
Precisely.
Yeah.
We've
so
come a long
vote
way.
We've
come a long way.
Yeah.
And even in Ghana, there are parts of our history that we don't talk about. We don't talk about the fact that, yes, Nkrumah and the Big Six were there, but there are a lot of women who are financing the political careers of these people. We don't talk about that. They are lost in the history books. We don't talk about the fact that even now in present-day Ghana, there are lots of women who finance political agendas. We don't talk about those things.
Yeah.
And then when you look at the political space, a lot of the women who are there are tokens. And let's be honest, they are there because, maybe they're related to somebody, or it will make us look good politically if we have a woman in this position or a woman at this forefront. Were we not here in 2008 when the present, I think is she still the Minister for Local Government, Halima? She was a running mate of Nanado, or supposed to be his running mate. All of a sudden, that was lost. Why? Because they said she's not married. In the community she comes from, the women are not leaders, so they won't vote for them.
Wow.
Yes. So it's important to have these conversations. And I want to implore women, especially young women who are feminists or call themselves feminists. Social media feminism. There's a place for it. Because, yes, it's very important. And sometimes that's the reason why I don't call certain people out when I see certain things that I think are not necessarily in line with what we're trying to do. Because there's also a place for it, where there's a huge demographic of our current population, in 18 to 35. They are there, they're having conversations all the time, and you need to be in their faces so that they understand some of these things that are happening that are disadvantaging women, okay, so that they don't become a part of the patriarchal cycle. But I'm employing feminists, if you're listening to me, you need to get out there and do the work. Accra is not Ghana, and Ghana is not Accra, and I will always say this whenever I get the chance. You need to go into the now 16 regions, the over 116 educational districts, and see the way women are suffering. And apart from the feminists, the men need to go too. Go and see what's happening in Ghana. When you do, you understand why we are doing what we do as feminists. And I said something, that somebody is saying that in a woman's community, they are not leaders, so they won't vote, because they see it as a taboo that a woman should be a running mate for president. Such what you would call backward thinking, but that's their reality.
But you see, that is very dicey and very delicate, because now we are looking at should I say, culture?
Yes.
And what now, say, contemporary times, what we are pushing as an agenda, feminism. How do you marry the two? Because that's your culture, that's tradition, and tradition never dies.
Okay, so you're mixing two words, culture and tradition. Culture is dynamic. Traditions are there, and traditions also change because it's the traditions that feed the culture. Now I'll tell you, a lot of our grandmothers and mothers, regardless of what we want to believe, they were more feminist than we were. Have you ever realized that there are some women who tend to be very elderly, but they are not married and they have a lot of children and they have used their businesses, be it farming or trading, to take care of all their children?
Yeah.
Yes, they refuse to stay in abusive marriages. They took their shame, wore it like badges, and walked away from their marital homes because they refused to be treated like second-class citizens. Again, we don't talk about these things. We don't talk about the woman who will be married to one man today. The man is not pulling his weight. She's the one who is taking care of the home he's sleeping. She says, I can't take this anymore. I didn't bargain for this. She leaves her children and moves on. And then she's married to someone else in the next year. Yes, those things happen in our history, but nobody talks about them. Our women are not as passive in the past as we like to believe. So this thing about culture and tradition and women are like this, really, it's neither here nor there. It's a narrative that unfortunately we've created in more recent times. One, patriarchy has done it. Religion has played a huge role because people are interpreting religious books like the Bible anyway, anyhow, using it to their advantage, quoting things that benefit what they want to project. And because, back to reading, we are not readers, back to literature, we are not teaching people how to dissect literary text because the Bible is the biggest book of literature. People are just taking hook, line, and sinker what people are telling them. So in our minds, feminism is an agenda. And so we are pushing this agenda. No, that's not what it's about. And I repeat, feminism is just really creating a level playing field so that women and men can coexist and bring out the best of each other for the society's benefit. That's really what feminism is about. Anyone who tells you otherwise needs to go back to the books.
You know why I'm quiet? When it comes to feminism, I don't like to talk plenty because I'm not a woman and I don't understand the plight of the woman.
You've chosen words very wisely.
Yeah, I can't do that. And I'm glad you've educated me and everybody else listening. I mean, Charlie, they educate you. But with their accounts, with their matrilineal thing, that at least pays a bit of homage to matriarchy.
Absolutely.
Right?
And even the fact that women are kingmakers. So the queen mother has, but again, we don't talk about these things.
My real question to that is, do you think they actually take that in all of its seriousness, or it's just, a mask? Because at the end of the day, for their accounts, we've heard stories. Yes, but when it comes to it, like you said, the women are the kingmakers. We have the Yasantuas. They have rich history in that regard. What are your take on that? Is it something that they actually...
So I believe that historically, the women did have a lot of power. And now, unfortunately, it's becoming a facade, right? And again, I'll just go back to the point I made a little while ago, that patriarchy, especially in post-colonial Ghana, and then, because mind you, most of the people are talking about, they featured very prominently up until 1902, which is when colonization in Ghana took full force, right? But post-colonial, by then, religion has done its thing. Patriarchy has done its thing. The colonialists have also projected the ideas of patriarchy on us, which is another thing we
So, Apiorkor, what you are saying is, when we were here minding our own business, we respected women.
Absolutely.
Everything was good.
And everything points to that.
And the people we are trying to look up to or be like, they came to actually suppress.
And it's the truth. But because we don't know the history, we'll sit here and say culture and tradition. Which tradition? From who? From what? But yes, it's become a facade because of the things that have happened in between. I mean, we have female chiefs in this country, not queen mothers, chiefs. But they are not members of the National Council of Chiefs.
Wow.
Neither are the queen mothers.
The queen mothers also have the
Yes, but they are not members of the National Council of Chiefs. It's now that a lot of them are advocating, the Santos of our time are advocating for some of these things to change. And I come from a long line of royals on either side of my parents, both matrilineal or patrilineal. And I have cousins who are queen mothers, I've got aunties who are chiefs, female chiefs, and this is a fight that they're really fighting. Because if you're calling us chiefs, or we are chiefs in our own rights, we are making sure that development is going on in our communities. Why is it that we can't be a part of this council? Because we are women.
I can understand what you're saying.
But did you know that there were female chiefs?
I did not know.
Exactly. No, and there are. Not queen mothers. They are chiefs. Sitting chiefs. Females. But they are not members of the National Council of Chiefs, National House of Chiefs. They are not.
Anyways. But what I would like to say about this one is, you see, you've explained this into details, and like there are bigger issues you guys are targeting, which we all should be targeting to fix, everybody being equal, in every regard. But sometimes social media feminism, like you put it, when you go out there and then you're reading, and it's like people or some feminists are looking at this whole agenda as trying to be a man. It's like almost neglecting womanhood. There is being a woman, and there is you actually explaining what real feminism is. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to be a man. You can be a woman and still be equal, and that is what you guys are championing.
But you see, the thing is, we're all saying the same thing. We're just saying it differently. Okay, and a lot of the time, you see, I would take my time to explain. Not every feminist will. And a lot of men get offended that the feminists will not take their time to explain what it is. I do that because so there's that. So that's why I'm saying that there's a place for all these facets of feminism, and you also need to understand that feminism, a lot of women who engage in feminism, they are coming from a place of hurt. Look, there are a lot of women who are going through very serious things because of patriarchy. We're throwing the word around here as we speak. But there are lots of people who are going through very, very serious things that don't make it into the public domain. Okay? So in this book, for example, you read a story about marital rape. And people say, marital rape, what is that? It's not as simple as saying, sweetheart, I have a headache, I'm not in the mood tonight. People are raping their wives because they want them to get pregnant and have plenty children. People are raping their wives because they don't understand that infertility is not just from the woman. It could be from the man too, and we need to be seeing. Yes. No. Yes, but do you know the definition for infertility? Yes, infertility is a couple who cannot conceive within a 1-year period. It's a couple, not a woman. So it could be from the man, and it could be stress triggers, it could be hormonal on either part. There's so many different things. Erectile dysfunction is in there. People will not talk about these things.
Because it's hurtful. You just mentioned one. Erectile dysfunction.
Yes.
That's cool.
But it's just as hurtful for a woman who, say, has a low egg count. I went into marriage knowing that I have a low egg count, and that there's a likelihood that I probably might not be able to conceive. And that IVF may have to be an option. We might have to freeze eggs. But that's because I'm also coming from a place of knowledge. And my husband also understood these things, So there's one. So now I get pregnant with my first child, and I'm celebrating this. And then people will be texting you, hey, you shouldn't be showing your stomach. People shouldn't know you are pregnant. Yes, women deal with all these things. You can't win and you can't lose.
But these are other women telling you this.
It's not just women, though. There are men, too. And other women telling me this are women who are also perpetrators of patriarchy, either through their own fault or not, whether it's ignorance or they know what they are doing. They are also perpetrating patriarchy. So sometimes when you see feminists and they seem so angry, it's not because they hate anybody. It's just because they're speaking from a place of extreme passion.
Yeah, but two wrongs don't make it. Don't make it right.
Well, you're right there. So. That's why there are some like us who need to, sort of take our time to explain. But I'm imploring everybody to also just be a little bit empathetic. when a man comes to me and tells me that he's experienced some kind of sexual harassment, I get a lot of those messages, believe it or not. Sexual harassment from women, you know, where they're touching him inappropriately, doing this, and I've had friends who have been locked up in rooms with knives, you know, sleep with me or I'll tell everybody you raped me, for example.
Damn.
You know, or I'll stab myself.
What?
There are those ones. There are also men who have been sexually harassed by other men. So you don't like to talk about homosexuality and lesbianism, but those things are also going on in our society. Okay? When I have men like that come to me, I don't say things to them like, "Oh, bear my pan," or bad. But these are the things that people say to men like this, and they are reluctant to come forward.
Even if you take it to the police, they will say
you
the
get
exact
it.
same thing.
In the same way, I don't expect somebody to see a woman who says she's been raped. She's visibly shaken, and the first question you ask is, "Why were you in his house?" Do you get where I'm coming from? Feminism benefits us all. Gender activism benefits us all as a society. And all I'm saying is that sometimes when you see feminists coming out like that, a lot of them might be new age feminists and are still learning how to deal with the hurt that they are going through. That society is conflicting on them. And so you need to be a little bit empathetic. Don't take it as an attack on you. It's not. It's an attack on the system. You may be a part of the system, but you might not be the one perpetrating it. Don't take it personal. And a lot of men just take it personally. That's the problem. Now, the second thing I'll say is that stop treating women who are married as goddesses and as women who have more important voices than women who are single. Because I find a reason why a lot of people listen to what I say is because I'm married and I'm a mother. So it's evidence that I don't hate men. Mini agenda, bia. So they should just listen to what I say. I have some kind of respect. I don't want it. Yeah, I don't need your respect for anything. I want you to deal with the issues as they should be dealt with. A lot of women are single by choice. It's not because they are lacking some man to sleep with them. A lot of feminists, I've heard people say feminists are ugly. They are bitter. They are not getting laid. A lot of feminists are getting some really, really good sex. Yes.
There you go.
Yes, they are very happy. Yes, they're very happy and very comfortable in very loving relationships.
They even take charge of their sexual life. They are more out there.
They're very happy. A lot of
is.
feminists have just made a choice not to get married at this point. Maybe for one reason or another, they're focusing more on career. Maybe they just haven't found the right person and they don't want to settle for less, because mind you, there are also people who are married who are suffering silently, both men and women, suffering in silence and making it look like every day is nice,
everything is gravy.
So let's just understand that regardless of the face that comes with feminism, we should just try to listen to what is being said, because there are important issues in there. And that's why I said that I may not agree with everything that a feminist tweets or everything that a feminist posts on Facebook, but I won't be quick to judge the person, because there's also a place for that kind of activism. There's a space for such people to grow in the movement, you know, in the conversations. And it's what you can do is from the background tell them, "Oh, Charlie, you know what? This thing that you're saying, you might want to look at it from this way, that way, that way." You're not going to get people to listen to you if you do it this way, you know, that kind of thing. Another thing that I do is sometimes when people tweet or they post things, I'll go into the comments and explain some of the things from my,
I've seen that before.
I do it a lot, you know, and then people, you know, "Oh, okay, this is what you mean, this is what you mean." But my explanation shouldn't be what's gets you to understand what the person is tweeting. You should just look at it from a different perspective. That's all I'm saying.
Charlie, thank you. I mean, there's a more in the book, the Matriarch verse. For men, please dumb it down and listen. We've been educated today by Apiorkor. Charlie.
Like Charlie, lecture session.
And it's important, you know, because we grew up with, you know, on patriarchy, and that is all we've known. So if feminists are saying something which ought to be heard, you need to keep quiet, listen. Then if you have an opinion, you can say, then you'll be educated again, not just dismiss it and go like, you know, then so. Nah. So we appreciate what what you've told us.
Thank you
Today. Thank you. Our guest of Anna never said anything. Mr. JB.
When you are with the matriarch, the matriarch, you don't talk.
You keep quiet and listen.
Just keep quiet. But something that caught my attention, though, and is a statement you made. You asked a question. You asked why poetry wasn't gaining so much ground, or it's not so popular amongst. And I think the word that you missed there was art forms. Because you mentioned music, you mentioned
comedy.
Comedy, yeah.
Music and comedy. How many brides will walk down the aisle with spoken word? How many funerals or how many families will allow the casket to be carried from the church to the van or to the cemetery with spoken word or poetry? Only very few people would dare. I might do that. She might do that. So we are not wired. The visible art forms and the things that the popular ones seem to always win over these other ones. Yeah. But there's nothing written anywhere that you must only sing a hymn to see a departed loved one off.
Yeah. Yeah, I get it.
But you see, traditionally, our priests and priestesses would recite stuff at the graveside,
all
and
the
when they lift all the appellations and everything, when they lift the dead body from the house to the place, and when they get to the burial ground, they will also say the stuff that they have to say. Yeah, clap their hands and perform in quote. But modernization has pushed a lot of things away from us. You see, and then religion also did its thing to us as well. That's how come these things are not so popular.
That's for religion, yeah. Religion needs its own day. Religion needs its own day. But you see, podcasting for a while and talking to other people, you get the sense that whatever post-colonialism, we lost everything. I mean, it's almost like we are yearning to go back, but we don't know how to go back. Right. And that's mostly because about the books, we didn't write our own history, so we don't know what exactly, who we were back then and how we can actually connect. It's sad, but that is what it is now. Appellations, because I've seen that. My grandmother's funeral, that was exactly what happened when I went to the village. And that was like the first time I slept in my village. Sad story. That shouldn't have been the case, but
no, but the story of many Ghanaians.
It is what it is, and I experienced culture like for the first time, and it was amazing. It was amazing. Some of the things I never knew was done.
I am a Christian and a staunch one.
Yeah.
But when Kofi Annan's statue was going to be, the project was going to be reviewed, we had the army take over, and it was Christian and Muslim prayers that were said. We had the rep of the UN Secretary General here. We had how many former presidents of African nations here? The entire diplomatic corps were at the function.
Yeah.
We said the prayers. We recited prayers in English and Arabic. Not even in Hausa. In front of them. And then yet we sit down and we cry. We sat down and allowed Legon to turn from what it is traditionally as a university to offer all manner of courses that the place is so full is besting.
Yeah.
We've done the same thing to tech. We've allowed law and other courses to come into tech. It's failed to become the technical place to be.
And now we are doing the same to polytechnics.
Yes.
Do you say we are doing?
We've
done it.
We have done same. Correction.
We did it to IPS, now UPSA as well.
Yeah, UPSA.
Exactly.
And I'm a product of IPS.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now it's
Done the
UPSA.
same thing.
So we at a certain level, there's the facade that the liberal arts is moving a certain direction. It really isn't. There isn't any deliberate attempt by the government or the Ghana Education Service to push it into the limelight for people to want to pursue it. At all, never.
But we're going to change that.
Yes,
right? Because the next step is to
Exactly.
fight to get these books on our local curriculum and international curricula as well. Yes. And I kept saying something again before we went live, that it's a very dangerous thing for the middle class and the upper class to be quiet. Because they're the ones who went to international schools. They're the ones who have the ear of the policy makers. They're the ones whose parents are even the policy makers.
Exactly.
And then we keep quiet and we don't say anything. We don't advocate for anything. Just sit down and be licking our fingers at nice restaurants. Really. So now, yes, a new wave is coming. Yes. No, and me, I do it unapologetically. It's true. And I keep saying that. Yes. And I keep saying that I make no apologies. I can't claim to have slept on the streets before or have swept gutters. I won't change my story the way some people have just to make it look nice and glorify it. No, I come from a well-to-do background. I went to international school. I'm a product of Tema International School. Before that, I went to Northridge Lyceum. Now, what good would I be doing my society if I can't use this education to give back to society? And every day I just go to the office, make money, and then be splurging it in places. What's the point? What's the point? Then why did you get an education? Because really, you could have slept in your father's house and done the same thing.
True.
Very true.
Charlie,
And me, I say it as it is.
Thank you guys. This as for this podcast, child education, child information, very informative.
Glad to.
Yeah, and thank you for Charlie sparing us a bit of your time.
Thank you for having me. I'm
Very busy
honored
woman.
to be
Anybody who
here.
knows Apiorkor knows Apiorkor, Charlie. She's very busy, but she's on Views podcast. God damn it. Yeah.
We made it. We're still making it, man.
Exactly.
You are.
We thank you. We appreciate you for being here.
Thank you for
Wafa
having me.
Charlie, thank you for being here as well.
My pleasure.
Yeah, and don't be strangers.
No. I hope we can come back another time and talk about different things.
Exactly. Next time it's not going to be about your book. It's going to be, something dear to our hearts we will talk about. But you're launching your book too.
Yes, on the 4th of October.
Okay.
At Alisa Hotel.
Okay.
Alisa has been so gracious to give me the space. I'm happy to be a friend of Alisa and happy that they're celebrating this with me. And of course, Citi FM, Citi TV, citinewsroom.com, Citi Digital. The entire Citi brand is backing this and owning this because, of course, we understand good things. And when we decide to start a movement, we're ready to make a statement as a family. Yes. And I must say that people like the Musical Lunatics, my band, Nikoya and the group, coming on board to help with the music. Every poem, so I will be performing some pieces from the book on the night, and every poem has its own score. Yes, well documented music. That because everybody in the band reads music. Yes, even though they're talented, they have natural talents. They've developed the craft. So there are a lot of people who have made this possible, and of course my publishers, Dr. Abley and Associates. Amazing guys, they understand the business, and I'm tasking you two to write. Yes,
we have to read first.
Read first, yeah.
Yes,
we have to read
so
first.
that's how it starts.
We'll start with the book, yeah.
Yeah.
But you talk about so many great things on this podcast, and some of it should be documented.
Yeah, I mean,
On paper, not
On
just
paper.
Yes, not just by audio, but
you
on
see,
paper too.
we're looking at an engineer and an accountant. Numbers people. We talk.
Didn't you have textbooks in school?
Well, we did, but we didn't like English.
So write in tree or gown, whatever it is.
I mean, I can do that. I can write tree. So
Yeah.
maybe. Yeah, but it's true. What you're saying is right.
Well,
I mean, we have to take advantage of our own narrative and just write it as it is, and not
Definitely.
let others come and dilute it,
Definitely.
whichever way they want.
Because you can always twist what you hear,
Yeah.
but you can't twist words.
See, already spoken like a writer.
Charlie guy. But thank you again. Thank you for being with us. And
Thank you for
didn't give the
having me.
date when
Yes,
you're
this is
doing.
the 4th of October. It's a Friday, 7 p.m. Come through to Alisa and let's
Lovely.
witness a new age of poetry in Ghana.
Yeah. And Views Podcast, we're going to be there. We are invited, though.
Of course.
Hell yeah. We are
I mean,
coming.
really, of course. That's not even
Yes,
no question about
We're
it.
going to be there. And
Easier.
be there 4th of October, Alisa Hotel, 7 p.m. Apiorkor. But let me mention your full name. Apiorkor Seyiram Ashong-Abbey.
That's right.
We'll be launching her book,
the
The
Matriarch's
Matriarch's verse.
Yes.
Be there, support, and let's this history.
It is.
Let's make
is.
it happen.
And yes, prior to the day, if you want to pre-order the book, you can go to booknook.com, booknook.com, or you can go to Amazon. It's there. It's on Kindle as well. So, or you can come get a signed copy at the launch.
Exactly. Views Podcast, we get ours.
Yeah,
Hello,
of course,
Jonathan.
Oh,
definitely.
you got it.
All right. So, thank you again. This podcast was
Thank
brought
you
to
for
you by the Practitioner, the perfect venue for your perfect occasion. Charlie, what did they do?
They do everything, Charlie. Everything.
Yeah. Now they catch the drift.
Oh, they capture. Okay.
Yeah, that's how we do it, actually. The Praetorium, they have events grounds for all manner of events, town hall meetings, weddings, receptions, both indoor, outdoor,
Very soon.
standby jet sets,
Outdooring.
already fitted PA system, secure car parking. I go go on and on and on.
Yeah,
Call them on
everything.
0244 926622 and they will make your day. The Praetorium, the perfect venue for your perfect occasion.
Yeah. We also have MatCon, which is a first speed dating event in GH. Yeah, Charlie, you single people out there, just come and meet someone, connect on every level,
You know, see.
business wise, relationship wise. Yeah, just be there, and you find us on Eventbrite. I think we should have another event sometime in September. So
Yeah,
just look out for it,
yeah. We trying to still pair people.
Charlie.
Yeah,
You have
so
to do
we.
something.
Anyway, so Madcon, love, drink, and
Switch.
switch. Thank you if you made it this far with us. I mean, this is a great conversation. Why wouldn't you be here? Thank you for sparing us the time and listening. Apiorkor was very, eloquent, and
As
Charlie, they
always.
educate we like
Charlie.
you did some lecture. Hall. Yeah, and as always, if you listen to this podcast and you liked it, good for you. If you didn't, good for you as well. We are here to spark a thought or a conversation. Apiorkor, your social media handles, put it out there.
It's Apiorkor across all platforms. So Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Apiorkor, Apiorkor. Apiorkor. Yes.
Master JB,
Yes. And there's
Do you
also
get-
apiorkor.com, my
Okay,
website. So
yeah,
you can
yeah.
go there as well.
do you care to put your social media handles?
It's like
You passed.
On Facebook is Nipinia JB, JAYBEE.
Okay.
And then on Instagram is JB Alote, JAYBEE Alote.
Okay.
The same for Twitter.
All right. So thank you for listening. Follow us on Twitter at Views Podcast, Facebook at Views Podcast, everywhere. YouTube at Views Podcast. Just follow us and let's get interactive. As always, love God, love yours, love all, and we out.
We out.